Hi everyone, welcome back to EpiCentre Seminar Series. Before we start, I have to say that this seminar series is recorded and it will be uploaded on our YouTube account. So if you feel uncomfortable with sharing your face and your voice, you can just turn your camera off or use chat room if you have any query in the last of the presentation. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. Today, our presenter will be Dr. Nelly Marquetoux. She did PhD with us, and she's working with us for many years. She used to be a postdoc, and now she's a research officer. And today she will talk about her research of Salmonellosis outbreak in New Zealand.
Right. Thank you. Awesome. So it's just a quick presentation about our current project research that we do here in the EpiCentre, but actually it's a collaborative work that we do with the animal surveillance team in MPI, especially Paul and Jonathan Watts are doing that with us. It's Chris' study, actually, my colleague Chris Compton. So, sorry, we don't see the slide title because I can't see it anyway. How can I go into full screen or something? It's just the first slide is about showing you what was the Salmonella picture in New Zealand as of 2 years ago when we launched the study. So these are the Salmonella, a graph of all the Salmonella isolation from clinical samples by vet labs in New Zealand. That's the animal surveillance team puts that together for surveillance. And if you are thinking of like the baseline level around like from 2010 through to 2015, you can see that from 2015 there was a sudden shoot up and emergence also of new types, most notably Bovis morbificans and GIV, and all the serotypes increased quite dramatically from this time onwards, and like around 2019, 2020, it was like a threefold increase from the baseline. And just for your awareness, in 2021, there was a little spike already, and that had been deemed as an outbreak situation back then already. So this is like a very large and drastic increase in Salmonellosis in Karong in New Zealand. And worth noting for notified human cases from the ESR as well, this is just for Bovis morbificans, you can see exactly a parallel increase in human cases of Bovis morbificans as well. So it was a really interesting picture, we thought, with other, so this is just showing the emergence of just the Salmonella emerging serotype Bovis morbificans that was present in the past, but extremely rare and has become quite common after 2020, 2015. And also, like the Brandenburg serova stayed in, like located in the South Island, but Bovis morbificans, since it re-emerged, has really spread throughout New Zealand and it is everywhere. You can see that here. Now, what we have heard in parallel to this increase, that on the fields there were a lot of outbreaks of Salmonella in Karong, and these have well-known impacts and risk associated to them. So obviously it's an issue for animal welfare and animal health. It can have a dramatic impact on the costs and profitability of the farm. First of all, to deal with an outbreak during an outbreak, it demands huge resources and labor to just cope with it and deal with it if it's in the clouds or anything. It's a very stressful time of the year around calving, and it will sweep through the herd and cause major havoc, really, with a huge cost of treatment, purchase of replacements when you lose your lactating cows, of course, the loss of milk due to death, and also the drop of milk in the remainder of the cows that are affected. And also it has a wider risk in relation to public health, obviously, because it's a zoonotic agent. So it's an issue for public health, and the most potentially the more exposed are the rural communities with the farm staff and the farm family and the vets as well, who will be attending those outbreaks of Salmonella. And it's an issue as well for the potential risk to increase the development of antimicrobial resistance. You need considerable quantities of antibiotics to treat those cattle in the face of an outbreak, and a food safety potential, like I said before, from bacterial contamination of food as well. And we can think also of antibiotic residues as well. What do we know already about this problem in livestock? Bovis morbificans isolates that were isolated from sheep in Australia have shown commonly some hypervirulence traits. So we think it could be similar for potentially those. Do you guys see something in the middle of the screen like I do? Okay. We think that it could be similar in New Zealand because of the recrudescence of those. This emergence of Bovis morbificans seems to be rather pathogenic in cattle as well. So it could be the same with this that was observed in Australia in those sheep with these hypervirulence traits. And Lisa Hulmois from Rebels, she did a little case series by following some dairy outbreaks that happened in the Taranaki region a few years ago. And she was wondering if there could be also a potential role of shared waterways and flooded pastures in the transmission of this new serotype, at least at the beginning when it started to spread. For other serovar, we have some ideas of risk factors because there was the first case control study in dairy for Salmonella was conducted in 2012. It's a Mark Stevenson study. And it was not Bovis morbificans, it was everything else, but they identified very strong and clear risk factors, which were pelletized magnesium supplements, first of all, and the use of palm kernel extract for dairy cows, and also continuous feed trough were a risk as well. So following this first study 10 years ago, the main granular magnesium product was withdrawn in 2012, but there are similar formulations of magnesium supplements that are still largely in use in the dairy industry, and that might be associated with ongoing and increasing issues with Salmonella seen in cattle that is potentially driven by, we were thinking, by issues in dairy. Also, we know something about human salmonellosis, like from overseas with Bovis morbificans. It's a source, the sources of human infection were mostly food products, both ham and vegetables, and also contact with pigs and cattle and layer and broiler chicken. In New Zealand, from the ESR, we have an inkling that the sources for all Salmonella serovar for Salmonella cases were food, travel, farm animals, and water. But there are still many unknowns about what's going on with Salmonella and the reasons for the pattern that we observed in the graph that I presented before of this emergence of previously uncommon or novel serotypes. have the risk factors changed, or have the pathogens changed, or maybe the previous lessons have been forgotten? That's what we really wanted to know. And we don't know about cross-protection between serovars from the vaccine, the population impact, and so on and so forth. So we decided to do some research about that. The expected benefits of this research would be, we were hoping to reduce the burden of salmonellosis in dairy cattle and on-farm business, to reduce the risk of spread to humans, and also just another opportunity for good stewardship in the use of antibiotics by using less of it, obviously. So we started in 2021, we started this study that I will present today, which is a case control study to investigate possible risk factors for outbreaks and advise on control measures on dairy farms. The cases were recruited in two arms of the study. First of all, we recruited outbreaks in mixed-age cows, and then outbreaks in calves as well. And the controls, the recruited controls were meant to be were matched by region and plant start of calving with the cases. The target population was the commercial dairy farms with milking herd of over 150 animals. And we intended to enroll prospectively 95 cases, case herds during the dairy season 21-22, plus the matching controls. And we were planning to end the study a year later, like wrap it up a year later. And that's our first human ethics application. That's what the plan was. The initial study design in terms of the cases, the case definition was over 5% cow morbidity over a period of 14 days, and for calves it was over 10% calf morbidity confirmed by culture, and we exclude any Brandenburg salmonellosis. And the recruitment of the cases occurs via regional diagnostic labs and vets, and it's voluntary participation. So yeah, I will show you, there is another slide about more precisely the recruitment process. In terms of the initial design for the controls, we planned to enroll 2 controls per case, matched, like I said, geographically and by plant start of calving. And of course, the controls need to have no salmonellosis in the current dairy season, and not any cattle test positive for salmonella. And they are recruited via Fonterra as the supply, among the Fonterra suppliers. So the process for both cases and controls is that there is a screening questionnaire that is administered to all the potential study subjects and to confirm eligibility, and for all the eligible subjects, they undergo a much more detailed phone interview about everything about their farm management that could trigger an outbreak. In terms of the recruitment process, it's a bit tricky because we need to find cases, and we don't know where the cases are, but it's the lab, the regional diagnostic labs, they know who are these cases, because when a farmer identifies cows with salmonellosis symptoms, they will ask their vets to come and have a look, and if the vet suspects salmonella or even something else, they will take samples for to confirm the diagnosis and send to the lab. And when so that's how we recruit them. All the regional vet labs are participating to the study and collaborating with us. And so whenever they send to the vet a salmonella positive result, they would tell them about the study and let them know to ask the farmer their consent to participate to the study. So that's where we recruit them. If the vet is aware of the study, they may go back to their client farm and explain that we are doing this research and ask them to participate, and then come back to us. And if the farmer is happy to participate, the vet needs to contact us and give us the farmer contact details. And if the farmer is happy, then we will contact them to administer the screening questionnaire and potentially proceed with them. So it's difficult because it relies on several layers before we can get to know the case farm, be in touch with them. It takes the lab and then the vets to enable this process to happen. So we have a little web page in the Massey website for the study where farmers or veterinarians can let us know about the study on the, about a case, on the farm case, and give us their contact details via the portal. And how did the study actually progress since we launched it in July 2021? Well, what happened was that after one entire dairy season, we only had enrolled 19 case farms, and we were aiming at nearly 100. 50-50 were in calves, and 50% were in mixed-age cows, but that was absolutely not enough, and we revisited as a group. So the group was us and MPI and Fonterra and Lisa from Gribbles, and decided to run the study for one extra dairy season in both arms to try and get closer to our target sample size. And we had to do a new human ethics application and launch a new communication campaign to vets and get the regional diagnostic labs on board that we were doing one more year for the study, and find extra funding and extra resources to go for one more year as well. We had to make some changes to the study design along the way to make it work. So first of all, like I said, we went from one dairy season to 2 dairy seasons. And we also increased the number of controls per case to increase the power. So now we are aiming to recruit 3 controls per case to make up a little bit for the loss of power from not having enough cases. We changed the definition of an outbreak. At the very beginning, the definition was going to be 10% of mixed-age cows affected within 2 weeks. 10%, no, sorry, this is actually wrong. It was 5% of mixed-age cows and 10% of if it was a calf outbreak. But that was way too stringent because it would, like in a herd of 600 cows, you need at least 30 clinical cases of that were affected, and that was too much. We would never get any case if we would keep it like that. So based on the observations, like kind of the distribution of number of clinical cases per farm in the early cases, which experienced Salmonella issues, we kind of saw that putting the threshold at 10 animals affected was good enough to kind of characterize an outbreak, and usually they last between 1 or 2 months, those outbreaks, before it's completely resolved and they don't observe clinical disease anymore, you know, after vaccination and all that. We also decided to not rely for case recruitment just on the passive voluntary participation of vets, because basically the vets were never getting back to us. We never had any, almost never had any vet come forward. I mean, in the early days, at least, they were not aware enough of the study and they were not really participating that way. But what worked better was that to have the regional diagnostic labs much more involved in the recruitment to help us. So basically, they needed to kind of phone their customers when they saw that there was a case that was potentially from an outbreak farm. They would compile the list of vets with positive Salmonella diagnostics and call them to tell them, please take part in the study. Can I give your name to the researcher? They will contact you and that kind of things. And I also spend we also spend a lot of time to actually call all the rural vet clinics throughout New Zealand to try to chase potential case farms among their clients. What is the current state of the study? We are nearly very close. We are more or less closing now the case recruitment. And we currently have, it's still to confirm because I have to still administer a few screening surveys next week, but we have roughly 55 case farms now, and 36 are amongst mixed age cows and 19 calves. But we actually screened 108 potential cases, but half of them were ineligible, mostly from being more like a few sporadic cases in the herd, or also being calf rearers, which we are not eligible. And we still have another 70 controls that we need to recruit, and that's from Fonterra, who is helping us with the recruitment of the controls. So there's still a little bit of a long way to go to really close the recruitment because of those controls that we still need to get on board. I just thought that I would kind of go over what we think were the issues to recruit those cases, and by comparison with what happened in 2012, which was when there was, as you can see here, there was a spike, a small spike, you would think, of cases, but they immediately, everybody was very worried and concerned about that. And that's when they did the first case control study. Within a few months' time, they recruited the same number of cases like us, and they had a good idea of what was going on, and everyone was super involved, and it went really well. So I would say that one big difference was for us 10 years later was the involvement from the stakeholders and the industry, because as you can see, from side 2015, the increase in, this is from animal surveillance conducted by MPI, and it's very clear the trend. It's like, I would call it drastic, sharp increase in the number of Salmonella cases submitted to the labs, and that was worrying MPI, but didn't seem to worry maybe a lot of other people, or we didn't get quite the interest around that situation like what had happened in 2011. Back in those days, the Fonterra especially was very involved in conducting this study, and they identified this as an issue to tackle, and they made it happen really. I think in the current outbreak, if you want to call it an outbreak, which I think it could be fair to call it an outbreak situation, it kind of settled down at very high levels and took several years even before the study was launched. it's noticeable, it's not worthy, sorry, that the funding for the study was roughly 50-50 between MPI and Massey University, although we did get time, resources, and in-kind from Fonterra, who are helping us to enroll the controls, and we much appreciate their contribution there. But I would say there was no strong political will from the dairy industry to tackle this issue or do the research, I would say, from my perspective. Because like in 2012, the study recruitment was entirely handled by Fonterra. All of the study subjects, the cases, like the controls, were recruited via Fonterra. And because what was really nice and neat and helpful was that all the Fonterra suppliers were administered the screening questionnaire. They did not all reply, but they were all kind of administered what's the equivalent for our study of the screening questionnaire. So it made it much easier to get a quick and full picture of who had outbreaks and who did not. And that was the main difference in the study design with our study. Also, I would say that 10 years later, this kind of research nowadays cannot be conducted without a proper human ethics application. There was no human ethics application with the previous study because the subjects were recruited via Fonterra, so they didn't need human ethics, but we did need human ethics, and that constrains, it's in a good way, but it does constrain the recruitment, because it's not very easy to incentivize people to participate in one way or the other. And also a huge difference with 10 years ago is that I think nowadays the enforcement of privacy laws is much, much stricter. So for us, it was not an issue, because it's good that privacy laws are enforced, but it made things difficult because we don't know who are the cases, but the laboratories know who are the potential cases, but they are their customers, and I need to first get, the lab needs to, we need to work with existing relationships and customer relationships. So the lab needs to contact the vet to tell them about the study and encourage them to participate. And then the vet needs to contact their customer, who is the farmer, because ultimately we want to enroll the farmer. So it's a chain of custody of the relationship, if you want, that makes it, everybody needs to work hard before we can get in touch with the farmers. And also maybe the vets were potentially less keen, or it was less easy for them to contribute today. We know the systemic effect of the vet shortage in New Zealand. They are really overworked and all over the place, and it's really, they are just not very available to freely give their time to research projects like this one, and we can really understand that, and that makes us even more thankful for all the vets who contributed to this study. It was really precious, and I know it's hard. It was really hard to get to them. Also, the economic circumstances make that, I think, not that easy these days. And also we think, well, there were many sanitary crises in recent years with MBOVIS and COVID and other stuff. So people get tired, I think, of being solicited this way, maybe. And finally, I want to just update what has been the Salmonella picture, give an update of it. So when MPI started to raise the alarm was around 2018, 2020, but when, and that's when there was a huge increase compared to the baseline, and it stayed really high for a number of years. But unfortunately, when we finally launched the study in 2021, it was around here. So you can see that actually the number of Salmonella cases in cattle has started to drop just as we launched the study. So we are not entirely sure, but we think maybe because vets now are used to, vets and farmers alike are more familiar with the clinical signs of associated with maybe these new serotypes, serovar of Salmonella, and they have experience, they have had a few years of really lots of lab submissions for them to get their head around and recognize the disease. So now they know what it looks like, and they don't submit those samples to the lab anymore. Maybe also the clinical impact is decreasing. Maybe the population is getting, maybe vaccination uptake has increased in those years, and the cattle have been more exposed for a number of years, and so maybe there were really less outbreaks on the field when we were doing the study. So that was also not helping. In terms of other research questions around Salmonella that we have at Massey, well, there are a lot more questions. So this case control study should identify strong risk factors, if there are any, strong risk factors strictly for outbreaks of Salmonella in dairy farms. But there are a lot more questions that are worth asking, such as what are endemic levels in herds and at the animal level of Salmonella infection in cattle? What are the different infection outcomes? How common is healthy carrier states for those serovar, and latent infection versus sporadic clinical cases on a farm versus an outbreak? What are the clinical and subclinical production effects? Is bovis morbificans, is it an ubiquitous bacteria? If it's not ubiquitous, is it the transmission, does it occur mostly via environmental sources or via direct contact and animal movements? What serovar are more involved in outbreaks of clinical salmonellosis on farm? What is the strain diversity and the distribution of the various serovars in domestic animals of all species versus wildlife and the environment? And are vaccine strains, vaccine strains, are there providing cross protection against currently endemic strains? Oh, and there are many more questions, I'm sure. But in terms of the research that I am aware that is associated to this case control study, at Massey, first of all, we were going to launch a little pilot ecological study of Salmonella on an outbreak farm in dairy. The idea is to find an outbreak farm very early after the onset of an acute outbreak, if you want, and follow them over time, over 4 or 5 time points, to investigate the dynamics of clinical disease and Salmonella infection on this one dairy herd that experiences an outbreak, like to see if animals that are not clinically affected actually are infected with Salmonella, and the pattern of shedding, the pattern of sero conversion, continuous shedding after the resolution of the outbreak, and all that kind of questions. We were going to start that in this very season, but we have had to postpone that one, park that for now. We might try and do it next year if we get some funding to conduct this research. there is also some work that is being done by Masako, my colleague Masako from the EpiCentre, about the effect of climate on a whole lot of diseases, but in particular, she is looking into Salmonella as well. This is her little picture of how it works and what she is looking at, and she will be presenting these results at the NZVA conference at the end of the week. And also the Hopkirk Institute is currently running a PhD project of molecular IP that looks really interesting. They're looking at source attribution of human Salmonella with the new, the emerging serovar given bovis morbificans, as far as I know, and that's really interesting research at the moment. And I will also present another presentation about this case control study at the conference at the end of the NZVA conference. It will more have like preliminary results about descriptive results of the case population of the study. So quite different for those of you who we are wondering if it's going to be redundant and boring. I'm not sure if it will be boring, but it's not too redundant in any case. I would like to really thank everyone who helped us with the study, and especially Fonterra with Ali Hodgkinson and Molly Bradley and Ash and Romila, who have been always helping us with that, and Lisa Hulmois from Gribbles and Ray Pearson from SVS have been really, really helpful for me to help recruit cases and find for a lot of things, and really grateful. And all three vet diagnostic labs, Gribbles, SVS, and IDEX, have been key for us to succeed in our recruitment ultimately, as well as Annexa, and all the participating vets and farmers, obviously. Really grateful for your time and efforts, and the funding bodies, who is MPI and Massey University. There's a typo here. And that's it. So yeah, if anyone has got any question about the project, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Nelly. Is there any question? Oh, nobody. So if I may, do you think in terms of profile, risk factor profile, do you think that the risk factor would be different from the one from the study that was conducted in 2012?
I only have really just more like my gut feeling from talking to all the case farms. I cannot really say because obviously we are still missing a lot of controls. So we are totally, we haven't looked at all at the data because we are in the middle of collecting the data. I do feel like nutrition can be playing a role, but it's really more my gut feelings.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would be surprised if the risk factors were completely different from the previous study, but I say that it's really early days to say. I'm probably
okay. And any other questions? Okay, if not, then thank you for your presentation, Nelly. Did someone say something?
Hi, Kieran. I just got a question. Thank you, Nelly, for your presentation. I was just wondering if you can tell us which ones are the vaccine strains of Salmonella, which are the most commonly used ones.
Chris might be able to answer this question. I think they did it back in the days. what are the strains? Wait a minute, I have something about that. If you let me look for it, it must be Brandenburg anti-fimurium or something like that, no? How can I? Sorry, I'm trying to. Well, I don't know at the top of my head, but we know that the most recent Serovar are not. The vaccine efficacy has never been really evaluated against those ones. That's for sure.
That's all good. Thank you.
Good. So if there's no more questions, then thank you, Nelly, for your great presentation, and thank you everyone to join us today. So next our seminar series will be in July, end of July, and until then, see you guys. Bye.
Thank you, June. Bye, everyone.